Good morning. So we are going to have an interactive bit. So if you use your laptop or your phone, go to menti.com and put in that code. That's everybody joining. We're going to force participation. We have to advance that slide in order to get the first question. So how do we do this? And then we'll do it. Perfect. All right, we are going to introduce ourselves, and as we do so, we would like you to answer this question. What does leadership mean to you?
Oh, okay. Yay. My name is Caitlin or Katie. I'm the director of esports at Michigan Technological University. Those of you that don't know where that is, Google Maps is a very awesome website I would recommend. We're in Houghton, Michigan. We get like hundreds of inches of snow every year. So if you like snow, come visit. We are a public institution with about 7,200 students. Our esports program is going into its third year. We have 2 championships, one in Counter-Strike and one in Overwatch. And I'm really excited to be here to, especially with these 2 panelists, because I've learned so much already in our intro meeting. So I'm learning as much as hopefully y'all are learning, but I'm really excited to be here and appreciate all of your time, and feel free to ask any questions. And as much as possible, this is an interactive session and we are all very on board with that. So we want you to get as much out of it as we definitely will.
Hi. I think it's on. Anyway, I'm Karis Atkins, and I am the director of esports and the assistant director of JMU X Labs from James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Don't know where that is. It's in the valley on the western side of Virginia. We have a gazillion seasons. But if you like fall, you can come to us because we have all the trees on the mountain. And so winter there, fall with us. We have been this is actually our first season coming up with NACE, but we have been 1 year almost official. What else am I supposed to say? Yeah, we're still growing and learning. And so I think we've got some really good things going on. We've made a lot of accomplishments in the past 12 months. But yeah, there were just never a time where things go slow or stop evolving. So.
Hello, my name is Eugene Fryer. I'm the Director of Esports and Gaming at Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth, Texas. We have summer. We have, it's 111. If you like to suffer, come to Texas. Have good brisket too. No, but we are one of the older programs in Texas as far as departments or varsity programs. We started researching the program in 2017. And we launched in 2018. I was already working at the university as an assistant dean of students, and then my role transitioned to director of esports and gaming. We are a private, religiously affiliated university. We're affiliated with the Methodist faith. If you don't know much about Methodists, they're religious, but like we don't have chapel. We don't have a lot of the things that you might think are at a religious school. Methodists are kind of like, "Are you good? All right." And that's kind of how we approach stuff. So yeah, our program has evolved a lot, and it's been interesting learning about all of our programs and our conversations. But our program has evolved a lot over the past 4 or so years. At first, we were very competition. We had 7 teams, and it was like, we're going to compete, we're going to compete, we're going to compete. And then we started to realize how many students we weren't involving with such a narrow focus. So we've evolved to, we're still competing, We've won a national championship in FIFA. It's not a big deal. We have rings, but we also have like a stream team, a content team, community teams, and I'm creating some classes that we're going to teach in the fall, esports related mass communication classes. So yeah, very, very happy to be here.
Thanks. So we want to acknowledge what's going on up here. It's interesting that there is no one thing that has stood out. So everything, all these words are supposed to get bigger the more people vote for them or say them. So it seems like leadership kind of, as we all know, there's no one definition, and it does mean lots of things to different people. So we're going to advance and ask one more question. And that is, what are you looking to get out of this session? We know what happens in our institutions. We have our own experiences, but we want this session to mean something to you. And so we want to speak to those things. So we will tell you a little bit about what leadership looks like in our institutions, but as we see things up there, we can kind of steer our conversation that way.
And really quick, I do love how it was so balanced on the previous, I was gonna say slide, but it wasn't really a slide, but like the previous graphic that was up there. And that's what I think is one of the beautiful things about esports programs right now. If you're working at a university and you are joining a housing department or a set of a staff of, well, not staff of faculty, but a group of faculty in a department or whatever, you are coming into an established culture. But a lot of times with esports programs, they're not old. So what leadership development looks like for specific esports programs is often a reflection of the people running it and the leadership above them. And there isn't a right or wrong way to do it, as long as you're doing something. Doing nothing is the wrong way, I guess. But so it's really cool seeing that representation up there. So we appreciate your feedback on that.
So I guess just a quick show of hands for a couple who is actually in the audience, and pay attention to who's around you. So how many of you are a university administrator? So that means if there's any presidents of a university here, that'd be awesome. Like a VP or a athletic director. Okay, awesome. How many are esports directors / coaches? Okay. Students. Hey, we love our students. This is for you. And then, so how long have your programs been around? So anybody going into their first year? Okay. Anybody 1 to 2 years? Okay. 3 to 4, 2 to 3. Did I skip 2 to 3? I did skip 2 to 3. Anybody like 5+? Hey, woohoo. That's awesome. This is awesome sauce. I'm sure we will refer to you for some sage advice there. So why is this really important? And again, we're kind of scrolling through some of what you're trying to get out of this session, and all of you may have different priorities, but clearly at the end of the day, leadership is a priority. That is why you're all here. If you didn't want to be here, that's fine. There's a bunch of other cool sessions, but we're really glad you're here. So we'll try our best to make sure we can get you some information, whether that's theory-based information, how we actually apply some of these theories in practice, maybe their activities, maybe they're how we address certain concerns. But again, if we're not able to directly address something, feel free to ask us either during or after, and we'll make sure to do our best. But a couple things I saw up here were tools, things to actually incorporate. And we'll talk about some of the structured things that we do in our programs. And again, as everyone said here, it's not one size fits all, and that's okay. But you as a participant in this need to really break down what we're saying. And we may not be saying, go implement this exact thing. But what is the core of what we're saying? Is it, I need to do a communication activity? Is it, I need to structure my organization differently? Whatever it is. And so got a little bit of homework to do in that regard.
All right. So I guess I will tell you a little bit about what leadership looks like at JMU. I learned very quickly that esports, I think we've learned this in other sessions, incorporates pretty much a whole entire athletic department into one single person. I learned very quickly that I also have other responsibilities at my university besides esports, and I can't do it all. So I enlisted the help of the experts that are at our school, which are our students. So our structure has me as the director, but heavily influenced by our, I have 8 teams So each team has a captain, a sub-captain, and a coach, and I pay those individuals so that they can put that leadership position on their resume. And they help me do everything. And so beyond those 8 teams, we also have a broadcasting team and a marketing team. They also have leadership at the top. And so we do structure it in a way that helps me do my job while enhancing their skills and abilities.
The structure for our department, we were very fortunate to be able to hire a second full-time staff member last August. So we have 2 full-time staff members, me, the director of esports and gaming, and then we have an assistant director of esports. His responsibility is to coach our competitive teams. We have 2 right now. We're hoping to add a third going into the fall of 23. We have Valorant and Smash. We had FIFA, but I don't want to get caught up on the drama of FIFA and EA Sports. The game's going away and it's sad. That's what we won the national championship with. But like, we lost that team. We're hoping to bring one back eventually. The structure outside of that, from a staffing point of view, we have 2 student assistants, 2 hourly non-work study employees in our office. And then we have 6 work study employees. And then we have 4 scholarship employees. Scholarships are a weird thing for us. We have scholarships. They're capped at $1,000 a year, and we can give 12 out, and our school costs $36,000 a year. So I don't think we have scholarships, really. We have money that we can give, but it's not what anyone's thinking when they hear that we have scholarships. So we have repurposed them. We use them for $500 stipends a semester for the students. And you are not through HR, but you're an employee of the department and you work for us, and you're going to work 2 to 3 hours a week on social media, on graphic design, on whatever it might be. One of the ones that we had last semester was a dungeon master for our department who created some D&D content for our stream. We're hoping to make that an hourly position in the fall. We're not sure if that's going to work or not. But the idea of all those roles, and we're very structured. Again, this is based on my background in student affairs. We're very structured, like meeting one-on-one structures. Even the employees that work 2 to 3 hours a week, every other week, I'm going to have a one-on-one with them. And on the off weeks, they're going to be in a staff meeting on the digital media team, on the community team, or on the stream team, depending on what their role is. And we do a lot of the stuff that I'll mention later on comes through these direct conversations in the meetings or in the one-on-ones, but also in activities that we structure kind of outside of that. So that's like our staffing is around, we have around 10 students and then 2 full-time employees. And then we have our players outside of that that have different roles in the program, that take part in different parts of the program aside from playing. And then we have the student leaders that are officers in our student organizations. They are not paid. They're just student org officers, but we also treat them like staff as well, invite them to staff dinners. We're going to start inviting them to some of the staff meetings next year, but having them be part of kind of what we're doing is how our structure is set up.
Those of you that were in the organizational structure panel yesterday probably saw my budget business major model of our organizational structure at Michigan Tech. But kind of a TLDR of that is I have myself, my assistant director, Chris Giletti. So we are full-time staff members. We also are under the athletic department. So the athletic director is our boss. And then under that, every single leadership position is held by a student or a former student. The only external leadership roles that we have are 2 of our game coaches. Everyone else is internal and they are all students. So if you couldn't already tell by our organizational structure, student leadership and empowerment is important. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. And I think we would all agree here. The organization structure that you have in your program will determine how important students perceive leadership and their opportunities to grow and develop as a leader. If you don't give them opportunity, which could be a title, which it sounds really silly. Oh, title. It actually means a lot to people. But going beyond that and giving them the power to make decisions. Obviously, I don't hand my now essentially budget intern, my student intern, and say, here's our money. Go ahead, budget. That's not his job. But what is his job is I said, I plan for 2 lands. Pick 2 that you think are most important. Give me the budget, spec that out, show me what you got. The individual that actually spec'd out our media and broadcast room was a 2nd-year audio engineer. He spec'd out all of the equipment, put it together, consulted with his professors and IT, said, here you go, Katie, here's what I got. Here's what I recommend. Said, sounds good. We'll buy it. Let's go. He put it all together. That is an opportunity that he would not have ever had without our program. And without, frankly, me saying, I trust you to do this. That is not my area of expertise. I know nothing about audio equipment. So telling the students, I know what you are learning and I trust you. Here, go consult with other people, giving them that power to be able to do that and make them feel like it's actual power, not just, okay, we're going to all vote on this thing and then I'm going to make the ultimate decision, right? People's perception of when they have power is really critical in terms of their development as a leader. All of our captains are appointed by the teams. And that's something we actually ran into this year was one of the teams said, I don't feel my captain is a captain. Ouch. So what does a captain look like? What does that mean? So you may need to have a discussion with each of your game teams or possibly a broadcast team or another team and say, okay, what does this mean? If you have a student leader in a position, what do you expect out of that position? And that may look very different. It's important to open that dialogue up for individuals. So
Can I jump in on one thing there?
yeah, please.
Like, I super agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. One thing that we've talked about a lot with the students in our program, I say this early on, even in the recruiting process, but like, I don't know more than you. I know different than you. Just like you know different than me. Like, we're not experts in everything. Y'all aren't experts in everything. You have students in your program that know a lot more than you about stuff. How can you activate them to act on that? A big thing that I learned early in my career is that people don't like tasks, but they love responsibilities. So spec this out, get it back to me. That's showing trust, that's giving them ownership, and that's in getting them invested in the process. And I think that's huge. I saw I hate that I'm bringing up TikTok right now, but I saw a TikTok that really spoke to me along these lines, and it talked about how millennials are often crapped on for being lazy, but the video talked about everybody loves giving effort. People don't love doing stuff that feels like work and isn't meaningful for them. I love my job, but there are some days that I wake up where it's like, oh, I'll snooze for another hour, or is it maybe do I have to go to campus today? But the game I play with my friends is World of Warcraft. I can go off of 4 hours of sleep 5 days in a row playing like, let's go, because that's what I want to do. And that's work if you break down what I'm doing, but I'm so fired up to do it that it doesn't feel like work. We tell our students, and I'm very transparent about this too, this might sound shady, but like, I see my job as an educator as tricking students into learning. Like, if you walk up to a group of students and say, hey, do y'all want to go have a conversation about critical thinking? No one's going to say yes.
Yes.
Well, some people might say yes. But if you can create an engagement opportunity that is meaningful to them and is exciting to take part in, that is intentionally designed to focus on the development of critical thinking skills, that's a win-win in a lot of ways. So yeah, sorry for
No, you're good. You're good. All of my students are paid. All of my students are paid. They're either on scholarship, they are work study, or they are student workers. And that looks very different depending on the individual. So typically players and some of my, what I would argue, student administrator staff, which is essentially my statistician, my facility coordinator, and my tournament organizer and competitive event coordinator. All of them are on scholarship because they are current students. My social media lead and community events coordinator is an alum, so I can't give her a scholarship. So she is essentially paid as a temp or as a part-time employee, but all of my students are paid. And that to me is a choice I make. I would rather pay somebody and be able to only afford a few and use the department resources that I have than rely on people volunteering their time. I'm all down for volunteering. I volunteer my time all the time, but again, I'm not a college student. I have a full-time job. So that's kind of what we do. And again, it is understanding what people are motivated by. It is very valid to be motivated to be paid. I had one player leave my team. I gave him an option because of behavioral issues. And I said, I'm going to revoke your scholarship, but I'll put you on probation. And in the spring, if things work out and we decide that you can come back into the team, I will reinstate your scholarship. And he said, nope. That's fine. The game in and of itself, being a part of the team, those are not intrinsically motivating enough to him, more so than the scholarship. It's his choice. But we have just different values, and that's okay. But that may be a conversation you need to have and try to understand with your students. Don't say, are you only here for the money? Probably not an appropriate way to approach that. But I always ask about financial situations because for me, it's important to understand, are they working 3 jobs? are their parents paying for college and whatever, they are typically very willing to disclose that. And so that goes into that thought process there.
So I think that I'm going to steal that, and I'm going, yeah, totally going to do that. And I'm so looking through our little interactive piece here, tools to use, how to handle ego, and then how to prepare our students for real world job opportunities. I do that all in one fell swoop, or I try to. So at the beginning of each semester thus far, we have essentially a boot camp day. We go through the Clifton strengths and learn each individual's, and I do this with the actual varsity teams. I'll expand in a second, but we go through, learn what everybody's strengths are, what they all bring to the table. I don't just leave it at, hey, take this test, and don't give them any context. So then we have some break out into smaller groups and talk about how they can actually apply what they just learned about themselves in communicating with other people on their teams. I will say that I have been blown away by the way that our teams communicate in game. I've worked in many different fields, from healthcare to manufacturing to higher ed. And the way that students communicate with one another in game is so direct and clear, but nobody really seems to get pissed off at one another when they, give this feedback, constructive or not. So then we turn that into, okay, well, where are you in higher ed? Like, are you a SMAD major? Are you, computer science? Are you business? Take their strengths, apply it to where they are in their career journey, and then show them how they can apply that to that big spider web that I'm sure everybody has seen of job opportunities around esports. And then we can kind of structure their teams so that, they are utilizing their strengths. But that ego piece, I have found that they will shut each other down faster than I don't know. But once they're armed with what their strengths are, that ego piece tends to go away.
A lot of times with ego, it's a communication issue. Like my dad always told me, I wish we instilled more confidence in you. Like, walk up to the plate, like you're going to crush this pitcher. Like, she ain't got nothing on you. Like you need to walk up like that. I was never that type of player, but there were girls that would walk up to the plate. They own the place. They knew. And that is in and of itself, walking into a room, exuding confidence. They were cocky out of their minds, but you don't know that until they communicate with you typically. Right. So, and again, I'll specifically talk about a communication exercise in a little bit, but communication is a big piece in terms of leadership. We think a lot of leadership is talking and people listening, and that's not really what it is. Listening is active, listening is participating, and listening is questioning. But leadership is also communication. Being communicative, being willing to listen as well. I'm sure you've all heard that, but that's a big piece of why the ego problem is can be mitigated. And I'm sure we'll talk more about things that you can do to try to identify possible sources of that, or possible ways that they may be able to use that ego energy, big energy, whatever you want to call it, maybe somewhere else to be more productive or to strengthen another part of themselves.
I think there's also a big difference between leadership and management. A lot of our students automatically want to go into management mode. And that's where ego can get in the way and that communication completely breaks down. So we spend a lot of time talking about the difference between being a leader and somebody who just wants to give orders.
Early on, we were not lucky with successfully managing ego. We had some toxic train wrecks on our team that were a result of me not knowing how to recruit at the beginning of our program. It was like, esports, we're going to win. Let's find good players. They get together. Oh, this wasn't good. They hate each other and they all think they're the best player in the world because their solo queue rank is so high and blah, 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 blah. There was a way we managed that situation with one specific team Some of it ended with due to some behavioral issues, players being pulled from the team, just to be transparent. But the bigger thing that I learned, and I think we all know this based on the experience we've had in different avenues, whether it's being on a team, leading a group, supervising a staff or whatever, it's different when you inherit something versus when you get to build or fill slots yourself. What I would recommend if you are dealing with ego right now is communication, talking to people. This might look different with different size programs, but one-on-one talking to them. Like I am very direct with our players and program members. And sometimes it'll be like, what the hell's going on, man? What was that? Like, what are we doing? You know, that's not how we talk. We talk about servant leadership a lot too. But like, that's not who we are. So explain to me what happened there. And sometimes we all know this too. We're seeing a symptom of something else going on. Someone's acting out because something bad's happening at home or with their personal life or whatever. So we always try to ask the question of what's happening so we can get to the root and try to solve it. But there have been some times in our program where the root was not something that we could solve. And then that comes back to, and Katie and I were talking about this yesterday. What do you want your program to be focused on? Is it, and it could be a combination of stuff, but is it, we want to win at all costs? Is it, we want to be as successful as possible in our games, but also get X, Y, Z for our students? Is it, we don't really care how our team does. We want our students to learn this stuff. Whatever combination of that is going to dictate your recruitment, is going to dictate how you interact with your students, and is going to impact your retention of students as well. But it got better over time with us because I would talk to recruits about, we will pull you from the team if you are toxic. I don't care how good you are. One of the guys that got kicked out of our team he peaked at top 15 DPS in Overwatch, and he got kicked out of our program. He did some really bad stuff. But like, it was like, yeah, it's not even a question. Like, you're really, really good, but you're never going to play this game with us again, ever. But for us, and again, we're really, really small, but for us, it was still like, if you want to talk about how else to be involved in the program, I'm down. And he left the program 2 years ago, but we still have like a Discord call every month or two, like, hey, how are you doing? Where are you at? What's going on? And that's something that we do from a value point of view, but also we're not as big as some programs too, so it's a bit easier for us.
I will say that for that, because I've had one student so far that I have had to boot. But it was a process. And I think what I started with was learning myself about how to basically trauma-informed communication. And I worked a lot with other people on campus. X Labs is a collaborative space anyway. We do transdisciplinary learning, so we actually don't have staff right in our building or our department. We rely a lot on the people around us who know better than we do. So I reached out to people in our Office of Disability Services to get resources on how to communicate with different types of people. And I talked to our student affairs affiliates and talked about how they handle conflict resolution and that sort of thing. And so part of it started with learning myself. So approaching this student looked much different than I think it would have looked like prior to having all of that knowledge. So it really was having that one-on-one conversation, trying to get down to the root of things. And this student, I mean, poured their heart out. And I learned so much about that student, but that student's never going to divulge all of that information to an entire Discord of 500 students. So we had to talk about it. I had to put on a coaching hat, like a different perspective altogether, and say, okay, well, how can we try to mend this relationship with your teammates and not divulge all of this information? And really working through all of those things, gave him resources on campus, so it was a long time. And then finally we just realized this wasn't going to work. And it's a hard conversation, but because we took the time to empower the student to make changes themselves, it ended amicably, which was a really good experience for, I think, both of us.
And I think a lot of you, what I'm seeing in some of these themes also are, how do you encourage students to do X or Y? And again, it goes back to the motivation piece. For me, I I am very motivated by opportunity to change people's lives, to communicate with people, to engage with people. That is what I am motivated by. If you throw money at me, I am like, okay. I'm not going to get into my personal dream in life because it's not relevant, but I know that down the line, I'm going to need to make sure I can provide for my family. But in the immediate time, that's not a major factor for me. But for some students to take opportunities to be a part of leadership, whether that's on campus within your program, maybe this is going to set you apart on your resume. I always say that, put it on your resume. Mason, who built the media and broadcast audio system, I said, put it on your resume. You literally designed a system to use for media and broadcasting for a D2 college in an athletic department for an esports program your sophomore year. Put that on your resume. How many people with your degree have that exact experience? Probably very few. Okay. And that program, his audio engineering program, is very small. So some people may be motivated by that. Some people may be motivated by making connections and networking, maybe not so much getting a job, but, oh, well, I talked to a Riot community manager the other day for an event, or I've met the lead game designer for Horizon Zero Dawn at an academic conference. I met the lead producer at Naughty Dog. What? Because I went to a conference, an academic conference, and I presented my work. There's opportunities that students may have, but if they don't know what they could possibly get out of it, they're going to kind of just be like, unless they're very intrinsically motivated by leadership opportunities itself. So you may quite literally need to give them the data or show them that this is worth their time. And don't think that that's work that's not valued or important. It's going to take time to do that. But if this is something that you want your students to be doing, to engage in the community, to engage in your program, to engage in these leagues and whatever it is in the esports field, it's going to take some work on your part. And I'm not saying, feed them with a silver spoon and don't encourage them to go do their own research, but there's a point where you give them enough information and then they'll go do it themselves. They'll go find it themselves if they're motivated enough to do it.
That one of my favorite quotes along those lines. I went to a presentation about 10 years ago at my old school. Worst presentation I've ever been to in my entire life. Guy didn't know what the hell he was talking about. It was a waste of time, except he said one thing that I will never forget. It's along the lines of what Katie just said. If you give somebody a strong enough why, they'll figure out how. I think to a lot of students on our campus, esports programs are the why. We all know there are some students in our programs that are heavily involved on our campus. And there are some that didn't do anything and probably wouldn't have done anything outside of class, outside of this program. For both of those groups, we can use these conversations to get them connected. The resume thing, one of the first things we do with our student employees is, hey, during your hours in your first week, you're going to go talk to the career services office and you're going to do a resume review. And when most of them, because we had a lot of freshmen last year, were like, I don't have a resume. It's like, well, the hour before you go to them, you're going to make a resume, and I'll help you with it. I'll look over it, but you're going to go in and do that with them. And then we review that with them throughout the year. We want to do it more next year. We did it a couple of times in the fall, a couple of times in the spring. But one of the things that we want to move to is getting them to make like a Wix or WordPress or something and like make a portfolio. One of the students in our program last year two of the students helped design our new jersey. And we told them all the time, you better show this off. One of them wants to go into fashion, start his own brand and stuff. This better be in your portfolio. This looks amazing. And we didn't do this. You did this. And I think for the leadership opportunity thing that's come up a couple of times, one thing that I would say as well, I think sometimes we forget the power of an invitation. I think sometimes as program leaders, it can be easy to get information about like opportunity on campus that comes up and put a message out to your staff or your teams or an announcement for the server. And that's all well and good. I get that. But also reach out to individuals. Hey, you would be good at this. Give that feedback. A lot of times, a lot of programs are predominantly made up of men, I realize, but a lot of times men don't get that feedback too. And they're just kind of, everyone when they're young, it's kind of fumbling through life. But like, if people haven't thought about what they're good at and haven't thought about how to refine what they're good at to get what they want, it's going to be a bit more difficult road for them. We can help with that. Because whether we play their games or not, they know we get it. And we're under that umbrella of esports gaming or whatever. So it can be easier for us to say that than like somebody that works in the library or somebody that they don't have a connection with, I guess is a better way of saying it.
I think that why and then is super important. And then also the applied. So one of the things that we've been successful with doing is reaching out to our alumni who are in esports. So we invite them back to share their experiences, and we then, after the conversations are done, show our students, okay, here's what here's what we've been working on these past couple of weeks. You know about yourself, you know what your strengths are, you know how to communicate. And then this is how this person is successful. So we have several really great alumni, like Steve Arshant from Team Liquid's a JMU alum. He comes back at the beginning of the year, and we open that to our entire gaming community. So we don't, while I think leadership development of our varsity teams is important, I think it's also a bigger part of the community at large, because our hub is we're closing in on 500 students on campus that are just part of what we call the community. They want to feel attached to something, but we don't want to exclude them from all these really, really great opportunities. So we invite them back for that talk. And we have some people at Riot Games, and they come back and they, that's opened up to the whole entire community. So we're empowering not just our varsity teams and those leadership, coaches and captains, but the community as a whole. And then on top of that, in between those big name sessions, we partner with people across campus. So we've got an ethics department. We go through the 8 key questions. They have to do it as freshmen, but it's kind of like you don't use it, you lose it sort of thing. So we bring them back and work through more esports oriented situations where they would have to apply those 8 key questions. We have leadership programs across campus, and we bring them in. And then we do fun things too, because it's just as important to develop these skills as it is to develop the interpersonal skills, which is a little bit easier to teach when you're doing. So they go bowling on Friday nights, or, they go play trivia during the week, and we get them out of their Discord game spaces. They are now talking to one another across games. My Valorant and Overwatch teams are best friends, apparently. No idea. But they travel together. They do everything now as a larger group. So I think they feel more of a connection, which is kind of cool.
I also think that, again, back to the empowerment piece is, as we all know, esports still does not have a great rep. And us as administrators and coaches, it is frankly a lot of our responsibility to educate the general public, to educate people in our community, but also outside of our community as to what esports actually is. There's a lot of stigmas and stereotypes on there. So with students specifically, how do you talk about your time as an esports student athlete, right? How do you demonstrate to a possible employer, to people at Microsoft, at Ford, that's the majority of type of businesses or corporations that our kids like to go to because it's STEM based. So like Ford and, the DoD, how do you talk to them and say, this was a valuable use of my time and here's how I grew? And that's a really important conversation, and that's okay to have it with freshmen. And it's okay if they don't know. I mean, I had one of our students come in and his parents were like, he's brilliant at math and he's good at this and good at that. And you can tell he's sitting there very uncomfortable. And I said, okay, what is interesting to you? Oh, well, how people make decisions and, why they behave the way that they do. And I went through what we would call a task analysis and human factors. And essentially I did the whole, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? If any of you have ever heard that. And the goal is to understand, well, you put the peanut butter on one side, hold up. On what? Bread. Where do you get the bread? The shelf. Where do you get the peanut butter? From the fridge or the cabinet, whatever. How do you put it on? With a knife? Where do you get the knife? Like, you're breaking this down. And he's like, whoa, okay. Obviously that complicates things a lot. But the point is he sat there and said, that's what I want. I like that stuff. I like understanding why people make decisions. Okay. Psychology may be a field, right? We're not all academic counselors. I don't know everything about all the engineering fields, but we have people on campus that do. So make sure you're already in communication or contact with those individuals on your campus. That doesn't mean send them an email when you need something done. That means go meet with them, whether it's a semi-regular thing or once a semester, and say, please talk to me about the changes on campus. Because if you don't know what's going on and you don't know about your opportunities for your students, how are you supposed to articulate that to them? We started talking about some tools that you can go and incorporate. One of mine, as I alluded to earlier, communication analysis, which is reflection and analysis, is something we're going to do with all of our teams this year. It starts with understanding how you like to be communicated with and what is an efficient way of communicating. So I'll use an example. Do I have a volunteer? Okay. So how do you like to receive critique? If I am critiquing you on your gameplay, I am a teammate and you mess up. What is an example of a statement that would be an effective way to tell you that you messed up? Okay, no, legit. This is a good example. Legitimately, if I told you you suck, would that motivate you to recognize your mistakes and how to improve going forward? Okay. Anybody else have a different way that they would want to be communicated with? Yes. Okay. So say the three of us are on a team. Okay. Very different communication means of communicating. What is a very inefficient way to communicate with you about the same topic, or an inefficient statement to say to you? Okay. Okay. So, all right. So did you play traditional sports? No? Okay. That's a very traditional sport approach of saying, get your head out of your butt and do better. Typically in a lot of those situations, they don't have the time to break it down, but there's a way to break it down that is quick and efficient. Okay. When do you like to receive your critique? Is it right after? Is it after a team fight or during a timeout, after a map or a match? Right after the mistake. Okay. 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 So what is something, if you are having literally the worst game of your life, your mental's in the crapper, you are missing your shots, and it is maybe the championship game, or it's a big game, or it's just even a normal game, what would I say to you that would kind of just snap you back into possibly resetting your mental? Okay. 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 Good. Okay, good. So very different ways that they want to be communicated with, right? Different times they want to be communicated with. The exception to this that I would say obviously is if it's something that they're making a mistake over and over and over and over and over again, they're not changing it and it needs to change or you're going to lose the game, right? So that may be a situation where they need to be communicated with immediately, but it's how they need to be communicated with. Do you like to be critiqued in front of everybody else, in front of your entire team? Or would you rather a Discord DM or a private message saying exactly what you would want? Okay. Okay. Again, very different. Now, this isn't saying go cater to everyone and you know, understand everything individually. It's a very fast game. Sometimes you don't have the time to do that. But the point of this is to understand how people want to be communicated with and what is useful to them. For me, when I played sports, telling me that my team relies on me and that I'm a leader and they look up to me is very motivating, very motivating. Saying you're the best player on the team, you have a 550 average, let's bump that up. That does nothing for me. That actually would make it worse for me. That's not the type of person or leader that I am. So this exercise is not only useful for your leaders, but also for the individuals that don't hold a title of leaders. You can still be a leader without holding a title. So this is one example of how we would go through communication that happens in your game. And maybe you can break it down into pre-map, like I'll use Overwatch as an example. Like, okay, pre-fight, what does the communication stream look like? Who is your IGL, in-game leader, which does not have to be the same as your captain if that hasn't been abundantly clear. Okay, so how can you use this to allow your players to essentially open up and say, I would like to be communicated to and with in this way. And everyone can work on it. That's what happened on our Overwatch team. People were micromanaging others. They were perceived as being talked down to. And a lot of that, again, comes in the way of critiquing mistakes or giving praise. I don't want to hear praise. I don't believe any of it. So if I make a good play, just tell the team we did awesome. And we played our hearts out. I don't want to hear any individual praise. And you would ask the same thing with praise. How do you like to receive praise? What is a good way of doing that? What is a good way of, I saw you adjust something in game that we want to encourage that behavior? And maybe that's you, maybe that's your teammate or their teammates, maybe it's the coach. And every coach has a different coaching style. That's why sometimes coaches don't fit well with players. Their coaching style may not be fitting to your values, and it may not be fitting with how the team is synergizing. That's not to say that it'll never work if there's a different coaching style, but it's something to keep in mind. So if they're purely, I'm going to critique you on your mechanical skill, I'm going to do it exactly the way that I want to, and your students are kind of plateauing, maybe again, it's a communication issue, right? So this is just one example of an exercise that you can do. The analysis part is essentially doing a communication analysis, which is a technical thing you can look up. They've studied this with pilots because it's a very set process, very short, quick, easy communication and of information. But essentially you listen to your comms and you code all of the responses or utterances based on what type they are. So essentially you can see a distribution of who's asking a lot of questions, who's giving a lot of commands or demands, who's giving a lot of information, who's essentially saying information that's useless / like joking stuff, which is called disfluency, which is weird, who's clogging up comms, or who's saying nothing, right? And do you need to analyze your team's gameplay and comm structure and adjust that accordingly, depending on what the outcome is? This stuff takes a lot of time. If you want more information on this specifically, I can refer you to some papers and coding schemes, but and possibly if there's a team that you admire or look up to and you have a connection, ask them if you can sit in on their scrims. Listen to how they communicate with each other. Hey, I said that thing in game and it came off really cocky and it was kind of rude. I'm really sorry. Like, I'm going to try to work on that. How do they problem solve if they mess up, right? How do they communicate that to their teammates? So that's kind of my long-winded explanation, and I will move on. But that is the communication exercise and activity that we will be doing with each of our teams this year. And unfortunately, it was not a proactive thing. It was something I've wanted to do, but after the problem happened and had to do it. So.
We're going to move to Q&A here in a minute because we're running short on time. But what Katie just said at the end, don't be afraid of that. Like, everyone in here makes mistakes. Everyone does. How you react to them is what's most important in the moment and long term. If you're seeing continual mistakes and you're not coming up with a communication exercise to use or a tool to implement or a way to tweak whatever you're doing, then you're messing up. But if you just make the mistake and then work on fixing it, that's what all this is about. We're trying to get our students to do it. We need to do it as well. We do have some resources that we'll put on a Google Drive and put in the NACE Discord as well. But since we do have about 10 minutes left, we wanted to see if anybody had any questions or any points that they wanted to bring up. I will walk around with the mic. For the online viewers, no one's raising their hand, so I will not walk around with the mic. Oh, sorry, what? Okay. Well, to give y'all more time to think of if you do have questions, I'll share one quick thing that we do, kind of working towards the same goal of what Katie just said. We do kind of like a 3 things kind of working in unison. It's a tool, an exercise, and a philosophy. So the tool is we use Clifton Strengths, as Karis brought up. We use that as well. We make, and you do have to pay for it, but we allocate funding for that for our program members. We make a workbook for them illustrating what their top 5 strengths are, and we use that as conversation points with the groups that we're working with. how this is super helpful is we learned this with our Overwatch team a few years ago. One of our players was strategic and very like command oriented. We got to do this. We're going to go. He was a tank too. We're going to run down there. We're going to punch him in the face and we're going to get the point. And one of the healers was very like, well, we need to think this through. And what is our long-term plan for this? And in matches, before we actually got to talk about Strengths Quest, but after they took it, they were both like, what the hell is wrong with you, to each other? We went through that exercise and they were both like, I mean, they weren't super cool after that, don't get me wrong, but they were like, I get where you're coming from. Let me tweak my approach in talking to you. So we did find some success with Strengths Quest. The exercise we do is at the beginning of every semester. And this did fall off a little bit last year as we transitioned from me coaching to our new guy coming in with our competitive teams. But like, we're going to sit down. This is the thing I used to do when I used to supervise RA. Me and the student assistant that's helping to lead the team are going to go in the other room. The team is going to stay in here. You guys are going to talk about what expectations do you have for each other and what expectations do you have for us? We're in the other room talking about what expectations do we have for each other and what expectations do we have for the team. And then we come together and just agree on some stuff. Now, typically when I've done it, there's always we want you to buy us pizza every week. And it's like, I can't do that, guys. I'm sorry. So there's some things that you might not be able to do, but that at least sets the stage of here's how we're going to do this. And that led to them correcting each other on things before we had to jump in, which that peer resolution is huge. The guiding philosophy is really, really simple, but it hits on what a lot of Katie was saying too. We talk to our program members all the time about time, place, manner. That thing you just said, is it the right time to have said that thing? Are you saying it in the right place? The manner in which you are saying it, is it the right manner for right now? You know, so like an example is I've told all of my students before, I want you to feel comfortable enough that if I did something that bothered you, you can come in, talk to me, and you can say that really, and you're not going to get any negativity from me on that at all. We'll have a conversation about what you said. But time, place, manner, if I'm sitting there talking to our VP of Student Affairs, don't walk in and curse me out. Like, understand the situation. We can still be honest. We can still have that conversation. But who are we with when we're having it? Where is it at? If you walk in and interrupt a meeting and start to, hey, can we get feedback on the match last night? No, we're doing this right now. You know, so we kind of drill that into people's heads, which makes it drilling in their heads like not a good visual, but we repeatedly say that because a lot of times the behavior that we've had to correct in the past wasn't bad in terms of like the time, place, manner stuff, but it was just misplaced. It wasn't happening at the right time. So instead of saying don't do that, it was like, let's find a better time to do that next time. And that helped us a lot. Well, we were just given the depth signal. So yeah, no, I got you. I'm sorry about that. We are going to be here for a little bit if you want to talk. We're going to put some stuff on Discord later on as well. Thank y'all very, very much for being here. We really, really appreciate it.